Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let's begin today's lesson. We're done with period 8, and we're going to review period 8 because we're going to go in AP Classroom tomorrow and do the multiple choice questions and some FRQs throughout. So we're going to be doing all the period 8 stuff this week on AP Classroom. So let's get started. Today's exit ticket will have some fill-in-the-blank stuff from this review. Kind of like we did in class, the fill in the blank. It's from apushReview.com. So, Apush Review, period 8 in 10 minutes. We'll see if it's 10 minutes, but maybe more than that. All right, 1945, 1980. So, one of the lessons that we went over was the Cold War economy. And so, we have to recall, okay, federal spending is going to increase, right? There's a lot of defense spending. We have the baby boom going on. People are consuming more. They want to buy a house. They want to buy a car. They want to buy a TV. Impacts. More people are going to get educated. More people are going to go to college because they're going to have access to that opportunity with the GI Bill. You know, it'd be nice if college was affordable for everyone, if not free for everyone, but at least affordable, because the prices these days are pretty insane. The prices that existed in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s were nothing compared to today. It's way different. So I don't know why the universities are charging so much, but something is not right. Okay. Sunbelt mentioned twice in the curriculum. Sunbelt's just geographic location, guys. This is the Sunbelt. A lot of people are going to be moving to the Sunbelt. We have the infamous pictures popping up in front of the text. But with the beauty of video technology, we can pause and go backwards and forwards in time as we please. So just look, this is the Sunbelt, folks. We live in the Sunbelt. Maybe your family's migrated to the Sunbelt after World War II. Who knows? Okay, but a lot of people are moving to the south. It's kind of the opposite of the Great Migration. People are going to the south. A lot of economic opportunity. So we talk about conformity and culture. We got to know about the beatniks and the beat generation, kind of like the lost generation in the 1920s. But the beat generation, they're going to go against the norms. They're going to go against the status quo. So the affluent society, or the intellectuals, the new left, right? The youth, they're gonna, in colleges, they're gonna go against the war, the Vietnam War. Yeah, you know, artists like Jackson Pollock, cool stuff, guys. All right. So here it is once again, in case, because see, all this stuff's gonna be on the exit ticket. All right. Like I'm going to do fill in the blank stuff on the exit ticket. All right. U.S. foreign policy post World War II. Just to go over the policy of containment, which was really hit on in the Truman Doctrine. It was created by George Kennan, who was Secretary of State for Truman. U.S. sought to keep communism from spreading, contain it, you know, quarantine it even. All right, don't, you know, slow the spread, stop the spread. If it rings any bells, right? So if one place goes communist, you know, if one person gets sick, then you know all their people next to them could go communist or, you know, get sick, so to speak. Look at this handsome devil, George Kennan. Okay. So there's different ways to fight the Cold War. One of them is collective security. NATO is an alliance, guys. We're still in NATO. If you look at the news today, the politics of today, President Trump doesn't like NATO. Well, he likes it, but he thinks that the other countries aren't paying enough money. Maybe he's right. Maybe the U.S. is paying too much. Yeah, you might have a point there. It's just an agreement between North America and Europe, right? So Canada, America, Germany, England, France, they're all partners. And this was created to like check on the Nazis, or not the Nazis, the Soviet Union, right? The communists, to show them, hey, you can't just be trying to take over the world and make it all communist, because we will all If you try to fight one of us, it's like fighting all of us, right? They're like the Avengers. NATO is like the Avengers. Economic frameworks, Truman Doctrine, Marshall Plan. So Truman Doctrine, remember, it's political and it's economic, right? We gave money to Greece and Turkey so they wouldn't go communist, and then the Marshall Plan, we gave all of Western Europe, money so they wouldn't go communist, right? So those are economic incentives. We have military interventions, right? Korea and Vietnam were both military interventions. The North was communist in both conflicts. My grandfather was in the Korea. My father was in Vietnam. Detente or detente, very popular in some music. That means like let's stop. All right, let's reset the button. Let's try to work it out. Let's not fight. Indirect confrontation. Okay. Okay. SALT versus the Cuban Missile Crisis. So there's two opposing instances. SALT is Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. There's two of them, SALT 1 and 2. They're going to reduce the amount of nuclear weapons that the Soviet Union and the US have. We're going to like try to make things less hostile by reducing the amount of nukes. And then the Cuban Missile Crisis, that was when the world almost ended because Russia, the Soviet Union gave nuclear bombs to Cuba. And America was like, oh my God, well, are we going to have to blow you up? Is the world going to blow itself up? We don't know. We need to just talk it out, right? And thank goodness that's what happened. Okay. So, Cold War impact on other countries, regions. Let's think about that. How's the Cold War going to impact other countries aside from America? Probably countries close to America, probably countries close to the Soviet Union. So we're going to go all over the world looking for new friends, newly liberated countries like India, and we're going to say, hey, do you want to be democratic still and be capitalist like America, or do you want to be communist like the Soviet Union? Okay, a lot of Latin American countries were U.S. supported, and a lot of Latin American countries, they're going to have dictatorships that are like far-right extremists, like Nazi fascist groups, essentially, in Latin America with death squads and everything. And the U.S. will support them because they're not communist, right? And this causes a lot of instability in Latin America. And we can see why Latin America is having trouble and issues today. And there's a lot of instability in the region, and that's why people have to leave because of violence and instability, bad economy. Just makes sense why they're not wanting to stay in their own country and having to try to move to a better country like the United States. Maybe the U.S. can help in some way. Okay, this spells out OPEC. I know it's a cool, that's a cool symbol logo. In 1973, there's going to be an oil embargo. Okay, the Middle Eastern countries aren't going to want to give us oil because we're friends with Israel. Cold War domestic issues. Both parties supported communism. So the Democrats, the Republicans, they both wanted to stop communism, right? But the conservatives they just took it over the top. They're like, everyone's a communist. This guy, McCarthy, Senator Joseph McCarthy, he was out to get people, ruining people's careers and lives. It's all part of the Red Scare. So, Korean War, some people weren't too okay with the Korean War. They were like, dude, we just got done with World War II. Now we're in Korean War. Are you kidding me? I know my grandma was like, dude, don't join the military. What? You're going to have to fight in Korea now? To my grandpa. But he did it anyway. And same thing with my dad. My aunts and uncles and grandma didn't want him to go fight in Vietnam, but he was like, hey, got to pay for college somehow. So Vietnam War was very divisive in the country. You had the youth and, intellectuals against the war, and then you had the conservative factions pro-war. Even though the president who started it was LBJ and he was, not conservative. So by 1968, with the Tet Offensive, the surprise attack on the Lunar New Year by the North Vietnamese, it just, even though it wasn't successful, it just really turned the tide of the war. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, this war is never going to end. We need to get out of Vietnam. Let's just stop." And then Nixon in 1970 started bombing Cambodia. Everyone was up in arms about that. They're like, "Dude, I thought we are getting out of Vietnam, and now you're bombing another country. What is going on? When will the lies stop? Really? When are you going to tell us the truth? Come on." This is Eisenhower. So in the 50s, he was warning about the buildup of the military, right? There's a relationship between industry and the military. And sometimes industry is going to want to make profits, and they're going to dictate foreign policy and military intervention policy. And so that's scary, because just because they want to make money, they're going to go to war very often. And we see parallels to that with the Iraq War in 2003. Halliburton, a couple other countries, couple other companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin. It is profitable to go to war, guys. That's probably why JFK got assassinated. He didn't want to go to war in Vietnam, and there was a lot of money on the line. And when business wants it, they're going to get it. So I think that's why he got killed, guys. Debates about the executive branch power. During Vietnam, with the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, Congress just gave a free pass to go to war. And, Congress is supposed to have the power to declare war, but during the Vietnam War, they were like, whatever, dude, like, you need to bomb Laos or go into Cambodia or go into Vietnam. You do what you got to do to stop communism. We see that happening in post 9/11 America with the Patriot Act, and a lot of liberties are put on the sidelines, giving a free pass to go intervene in countries based on the threat of terrorism, right? So even though we don't declare war in Iraq, we don't declare war. No, we did declare war in Afghanistan, but with Iraq, with Libya and Syria, we just keep going into Middle Eastern countries. And Congress really doesn't. They just allow the executive branch to do as they please, like with Obama and Bush and Clinton. They were just going to war as they felt they needed to. Now let's go into civil rights. Okay, so in period 8, guys, civil rights will be challenged. You see two sides of it. Civil rights are gonna blossom and expand with the Great Society and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, but with the Red Scare and McCarthyism, civil rights will be challenged, right? Like, are you a communist? Should we, keep tabs on people, spy on people? So we'll see how it progresses. This was a very good executive order, 9981. Truman desegregated the military. You got to know that. That's where segregation started to stop. Truman said, in the military, we're not going to have all black units and all white units and all Mexican units. We're going to just blend them all together, because that's really weird. Everyone should be, they're fighting together. They should be, blended together. So Brown versus Board is a case we got to know for GoPo and APUSH, guys. It ends segregation in schools and then across the country. Civil Rights Act, 1964. There you can see Martin Luther King and LBJ. Kind of ironic, LBJ sent the FBI to track Martin Luther King, so there's a lot of weird stuff going on. White resistance to desegregation. In the South, guys, the Southern Manifesto, they're going to be really against integrating. The Little Rock Nine, those brave 9 African-American students, needed support from the National Guard to help them get to school in an integrated campus. So debates emerge among activists, right? You're going to have extremists like the Black Panthers. They were okay with advocating using violence and taking up arms. Okay, and Black Panthers, as in the civil rights activists, they're not from Wakanda, guys. Okay, they're not doing the Wakanda forever. But if you know that Black Panther is a good fighter, then you should make that connection with Black Power and the Black Panthers, guys. Okay. Rights for other groups and other social issues. Okay, so women in the 60s, 70s, they're going to try to challenge gender norms and gender roles. And Betty Friedan, She comes up with the feminine mystique, which goes against the cult of domesticity. And the cult of domesticity, guys, is from the 1800s, where women are just supposed to stay at home, clean the toilets, cook and clean, and take care of the kids, and nothing more. All right, don't go to school, don't get an education, don't get a good job or career. Don't even try it, right? Don't be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer or whatever. Um, and, you know, it's good to challenge that, guys, because everyone's equal. Yes, it's okay. Yeah, sometimes there's housewives, sometimes there's house husbands. Sometimes people take turns to take care of the kids, but both can equally, contribute financially, guys. Depending on your skill levels or your attributes. So gay and lesbians are going to fight for their rights because, as tough as it has been, it was really bad in the 60s and 70s, guys. In the 50s, if you were gay or lesbian, your rights were very limited. So there were riots to bring about awareness, right? Cesar Chavez with United Farm Workers, he's gonna create, just like Martin Luther King, a nonviolent way to protest and get better rights for the grape pickers using hunger strikes, guys. But we can't forget Dolores Huerta. She was just as prolific and prominent as Cesar Chavez. They fought for the labor workers, which helped my grandfather, my grandparents, helped my aunts and uncles who worked in the fields, guys. Um, my mom and dad, sorry, my mom and uncles and my grandparents, my granddad, they would say that they would get sprayed on with pesticide. They didn't know what was in it. Probably had DDT. Um, there was no place to go to the restroom. There were no restroom breaks. You had to eat lunch in the field at your discretion, at your loss, right? So they had to fight for rights, guys, because it was out of control. American Indians, they were fighting for their rights. Better treatment, better resources. The AIM, right? That's a good way to remember it. AIM. That's how I remember it. Awareness of poverty. Trying to fight poverty, guys. It doesn't matter what race, just across the board, poverty. There's poor people, poor white people, poor black people, poor Hispanics, poor Native Americans. We're trying to get them help so they are out of the poverty line, right? And LBJ's Great Society is going to help with that. Okay, so what is the Great Society again, guys? Let's go over it. Okay, so liberalism is getting the government to promote social well-being, to like make a social welfare system to help poor people, right? Or just to help everyone. Okay, right now it'd be better if we had had a stronger social welfare system, because right now a lot of people lost their jobs. They're still trying to get unemployment benefits. They can't even get connected to the government hotline in their own states, and they're freaking out because they're not going to have enough money to pay rent for next month. They're running out of food. They don't have health insurance, so if they got sick, they might not be able to go to the hospital. Some people, they have their job and they get sick and they have to go to work anyway because they can't lose their job, and the job does not provide any paid sick leave. Now, in other countries, the social well-being of the government accounts for paid sick leave, paid maternity leave, paid health care. The government provides those things, not businesses, not companies. The government provides it so that they don't have to rely on businesses to do the right thing, right? Because a lot of businesses aren't giving paid sick leave. So people are sick and they have to prove that they have the coronavirus, and then they go to work anyway, and then it spreads throughout the whole company. It's not good. So that's a big problem right now, guys. People are freaking out because they don't know where their next meal is going to come from, or if they get sick, are they going to be okay? And other countries don't have to question with that because they already have the government program set in place. Now, Great Society is trying to expand that in the 60s, right? Let's end discrimination. Let's try to eliminate poverty. Let's create food stamps. Let's make Medicaid, Medicare. Let's improve education. Let's start, Head Start. Let's do 21st century after school. Let's help pre-K education. Supreme Court in the 1960s promoted individual freedoms, right? That's the Warren Court. Right to privacy. Okay, Griswold v. Connecticut. Miranda rights, Miranda v. Arizona, uh, right? The right of the consent of the accused, right, or the rights of the accused. People on the far left liberals didn't go far enough to change society racially and economically. So people on the far left, super radicals, said just like with the New Deal, just like with Great Society, it didn't go far enough. Okay, it should have maybe give a universal basic income, kind of like um, Yang, I think Andrew Yang, the presidential candidate who dropped out, he wanted a universal basic income. And in the New Deal, there was another uh, movement to try to get that universal basic income going. We have the Black Panthers. Okay, keeping on track, demographics and counterculture. How is the population going to change, guys? Well, we have this nuclear family, 2 children, suburbs, stay-at-home mom. That's the dynamic. Dad goes out with a suit and tie and comes home to the wife making food. So, and the suburbs, guys, everyone lives in the outside of the city, not on the inside. Okay, so you can have a big backyard and have a dog. Well, women started to work more in the 70s, guys, because the economy started to get bad in the 70s with stagflation. Counterculture, hippies, they challenged the whole, static, traditional values of the 50s. They started to use drugs and experiment with drugs, and they created a sexual revolution where people, it was kind of like, I don't know, they didn't really meet each other. They were just like, hey, what's your name? Okay, let's be friends, right? And then they would have a good time. So debates between conservatives and liberals. Well, conservatives are going to say, hey, uh, what's going on? Like, people are just having sexual relations with whoever, and that's going to cause problems, which it did. A lot of STDs are going to rise, and they're going to make unwanted pregnancies and stuff like that. But a big issue is Bake versus University of California. Um, it's going to go against the whole quotas for minority applicants. So uh, there was like affirmative action, but it was like there was quotas. So they're like, we must take 100 Asian people, we must take 100 African, black kids and 100 Latinos, and quotas aren't really constitutional because it's like, well, what about these other people who have more qualifications and they just met the limit, so they can't get in. Okay. Immigration Act of 1965. We're going to go against the immigration quotas of the 1920s. So we're going to help get immigrants back into America. Reverse the quota system. We're going to help Latin Americans and Asians because they were, like, remember the Chinese Exclusion Act and the Japanese internment camps. We were treating Asians really bad for like pretty much almost, almost 100 years. From 1880 to 1950, right? Latin America too, we like did mass deportations in the Great Depression, sent a bunch of Mexicans, like millions of Mexicans back to Mexico. Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, talking about the environment, guys. We've got to look at all the pesticides and the land use problems, the impact of the ecosystem. So we're going to, Nixon, even though he was corrupt and resigned, he created the EPA, the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, all these great legislation. Okay, great. So these are what we covered for all of Unit 8, folks. Okay, I will make sure that we get access to our AP classrooms because we're going to be working on the multiple choice for Unit 8, and then we'll be working on the FRQs for Unit 8. I will unlock those, and I'll make the assignments on Microsoft Teams. Great. So I will make sure the exit ticket has a lot of these fill in the blanks, and I will post this PowerPoint as well. Very good. Well, have a great day, guys. Study hard.